Hello there, welcome to One on One. My name is Bridget Otu. Today on One on One, as you may have seen on the flyer, we're talking polling and also the new patriotic parties November 4 primaries. Global InfoAnalytics has the latest poll out. I'm sure you may have seen it. We'll get into details of it. But we'll talk in general, polling, and understand, I didn't even know, there are opinion polls that aren't scientifically backed, but perhaps based on maybe sentiment. And then there are scientific polling. We will talk about that. The Executive Director of Global InfoAnalytics is Dankwah MUSSA, and he joins me in the studio to help us understand and also look at their latest polling and how that will shape the new patriotic party's November 4 elections or primaries. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
I want to start from the very basics of understanding, the polling and opinion polls. When you see people online and they ask a question, who are you likely to vote for in the 2024 elections? And say it's on my page. I said these days with the X or Twitter, you can easily do poll. And then the responses come in. How accurate will those responses be, given that most of those people will be my followers who think that I think a certain way? Yeah. So just explain that to me. Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much for having me. Opinion polls are meant to be scientific. Scientific in the sense that the number of people you interview is determined by a formula. And who you interview, where the interviews are held, are also very important. Remember, we have a voting system that is one person, one vote. Mm. And if you are in a region, say Ashanti region, and you have 4 million voters, if you are doing an interview or survey or poll, and you have Ashanti region, Greater Accra, Eastern region, you must assign the number of samples proportionately to each of these regions based on the voting population of that region. Okay,
I want you to break that down to proportionately. What do you mean? Okay. Just break it down. So in the current... It's Ashanti region. One would say, oh, it's Ashanti region, so everywhere is the same.
No.
Okay, so explain.
If you look at the contribution of Ashanti region to National Voters Register, it's about, let's say, 19% of Ghanaian voters are in the Ashanti region. Okay. In Greater Accra, it's about 21 or 20% thereabout. So when you are assigning a sample of 100, it means you must assign 19 interviews to Ashanti region. Oh, I understand. And assign 21 to Greater Accra. Okay. In that order. Right. So those with a less proportion of population will have less of that sample that you are going to deploy. That is what makes it scientific. Otherwise, if you give Ashanti region the same number of respondents as Northeast or Volta region, that does not reflect the reality on the ground. And that means that the sample will be skewed in a way that will disadvantage Ashanti region. So you'll be misrepresenting the views of Ashanti region or underrepresenting their views.
Explain that to me in practical terms. So Northeast, let's pick Northeast. Northeast, their contribution to national. You've talked about Ashanti region.
Northeast has less than 2% of the people voting in this country.
Right.
So if you are assigning interviews out of 100, they must get 2. Only 2 interviews.
Okay. Wow, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yes. And Ashanti must get 19. Greater Accra must get 21.
Oh, so it is each according to their strength or contribution.
Absolutely.
Okay, now
because
I understand.
When the actual elections are held, the results will come in the same way. So that is how you first assess the scientific nature of the poll. Okay. And then it's very important that the polling, the people you select are random.
Okay.
You don't profile people for elections and say, oh, let me target these people and go and interview them. When you do that, you get the views of that group.
So that is the flaw with, for instance, using my followers.
Absolutely.
To do a poll on national issues.
And that is just one of the flaws. Oh. Another flaw is that you don't know where that person voting is coming from. Is it coming from Ashanti region, Eastern region, Western region, or Greater Accra? So the views you are collecting, is it national view or views from people that you are linked with somewhere in a corner of a crack.
Right.
But it also doesn't make it entirely wrong. It gives you, to some extent, if it's broad, the perspective of people who are on social media. If it is widely circulated and widely shared and not coordinated and hijacked by this political Facebook
Landguards. They call them social media
landguards.
Yeah.
They can skew the opinion in a way that is no longer scientific.
Okay.
But it doesn't mean that you cannot do opinion polls online, because if you have a panel interview, people you've already maybe recruited across the country, that survey can be done online. So it depends on the structure you put in place and who is involved and how it is conducted.
But even though that is flawed in terms of doing, say, national polling, doesn't it have some sort of effect on the psyche of potential voters who might see this results, even though it's coming from my supporters or my followers who are probably are thinking a certain way? Doesn't it have that kind of effect?
I think going forward it might, because in the latest poll that we did, about 92% of respondents we spoke to in the country are on social media.
Okay.
WhatsApp being the first, Facebook second, and then you have Twitter and then TikTok.
Wow. So WhatsApp, when you say WhatsApp, you mean more people
Yes.
access information or data on WhatsApp?
Yes.
Than even Facebook?
Yes.
Wow, 92% are on social media.
Yes.
WhatsApp is number 1. Number 2 is Facebook. 3 is X or Twitter.
And third,
and then TikTok.
TikTok, yes.
Wow, I had no idea.
So if you have a social media influence and the poll is running, then you could have impact on the people who are on social media. But again, you have 8% of voters who said they are not on social media.
8%.
They use YAM phones.
Right.
So it means when you're doing a online poll, you are actually ignoring those who don't have access to social media.
Okay.
And in actual elections, they will show up.
And they can make a whole lot of difference. So given that, sample size could be plus or minus 1 or 2.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Wow. So again, help us understand. But help us understand. There are targeted polling. So if a member of parliament say, as I have heard the member of parliament for Ifutu talk about, that he does poll in his constituency to see the mindset, to see if he's working well, if this is, so you can do targeted and it works. So when do you use targeted polling and how effective are those?
What he is meant to have said is that he target his constituents only.
Okay, that's okay.
Whether you are MPP, NDC or floating voters, he doesn't care. He wants to engage his constituents. That is scientific polling. Okay.
Oh, okay. Even though it is targeted at Ifutu constituents, for instance.
Because he cares about himself as a member of parliament for Ifutu.
Right.
It will have no benefit for him if he goes to the East and that's his polling.
Right.
Because those people don't vote for him.
Okay.
So he's targeting his constituents. That's where the target meant. But when he is in that constituency, he interviews everyone.
Okay, so they could be NDC, NPP, CP, but they are in his constituency.
Yeah, so he's targeting his constituents. But if you go and you are targeting only MPP people, maybe you want to know the views of MPP people. Okay. But that's not even the best way of doing it. Target everybody and then analyze the results based on party affiliation of the people. So you can see the views of MPP voters,
and see
the views of the NDC voters, and the views of floating voters and others. That will give a better outcome than just targeting one particular political party. Okay,
so let's talk about the national polling again, whether it's opinion poll, which is supposed to be, should be scientific, and how maybe pollsters have got it wrong in the past or continues to be a challenge. For me, I think the biggest one was when Donald Trump became president, because not a single post gave him a dog's chance. Not only his voters or his supporters knew that he would win. So help us appreciate that. What do you think went on? If we're looking at that, and also in Ghana here at the time, there were pollsters, including I believe Mr. Bennett, who had predicted a win for Mr. John Dramani Mahama in 2016.
Okay, let's take the opinion polls for a start. Opinion polls, as I said earlier, is a sampling of opinion of voters.
Sure.
based on questions that you want to find out.
Sure.
And those questions are administered randomly over the phone or in person. Over the phone is when you have a panel of voters from across all parties. You can call them every month to see their views on the national issues, their outcome of the elections. Whether those views are changing. Those are called longitudinal polls.
Okay.
Talking to the same people every month.
Okay. Oh.
And when someone changes his mind, you know, this person was voting X, is now voting Y.
Okay.
You do that, we call it the tracking poll.
Okay.
And then you have the cross-sectional poll, which means you go to randomly selected constituencies and interview people randomly on the street. Okay. Not the same persons, because you cannot go to the field and see the same person you talked to last time. Okay. So you have to do it cross-sectional. Now, the accuracy of the poll determines or is dependent on the sample size. If the sample size was accurate, was properly determined, was the margin of error properly assessed, and did you actually interview people randomly on the street? You can't go to a church in the constituency and stand at the front of the church and interview people coming in or going out.
They are likely to give you the same answer. They are just coming from church. Oh,
and if you go to the mosque, you get the same view. Now, we know that people's voting intentions differ depending on what church they go to. We've seen that data. Okay. So if you go to Presby Church, I can tell you this is how they're going to select who they want to vote for. If you go to a Pentecostal church, you see the pattern of their voting is similar. If you go to the mosque, you see the pattern of voting is similar. So what you have to do is to stand at a location where every member of the society has an equal chance of being selected. So, for example, if you go to a junction of the community, main square where people pass and go, you'd like to see someone from Presbyterian Church passing, a Muslim passing by, a Jewish passing by. Anybody who is in the community mix will be passing through that.
Okay.
So when you stand there and do your random interviews, you stand a better chance of getting the views of people representing that community than going to stand at a mosque or a church or any other places that are not good. And then also, if you are in an urban constituency, you have to avoid interviews at the marketplaces. At the marketplaces, there are people who come from different areas.
Right.
Medina Market. People come from Somanya, come from Eburi, they don't vote there. So with regards to the presidential, you'll be fine.
Oh, okay.
But when it comes to the parliamentary, they may give you a view of parliamentary candidate that is not there for Medina, but the one in Somanya.
Okay, so for national, if you're doing presidential, it doesn't matter where you stand.
It's one
but if you're doing parliamentary, you could have somebody from Dankwah.
Absolutely.
Who is now at Kole Klote constituency.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that
so
would
you may
have an impact on the
You
poster.
may have to have a smart way of asking them whether they vote there or not.
Okay.
If they said no, then you let them tail off. Or you don't ask them certain questions. Yes, exactly. Okay. Now, how do they get the polling wrong? Per what we have seen in the US. That wasn't the first time. There has been polling that has gone wrong way back in the 1940s. And it is not unusual. It is when the pollster gets his act wrong.
How? Like, explain that.
For example, the sampling.
Sure.
If you don't deploy the sample accurately.
Okay. So it's a question I wanted to ask, so I'm glad you brought it in. So when you say picking the right sample or sampling accurately, what do you mean by that?
See, to interview, let's say, Ghanaian voters with about 80 million voter population,
sure.
How many interviews do you have to conduct? You must first determine that. You can't go and interview 500 people and say that, oh, it represents the views of Ghanaians. Maybe the sampling or the sample is not sufficient enough for you to generalize the outcome of that survey.
Okay.
So normally what we do is that we say, okay, Ghana is 80 million voter population.
Okay.
We want to have 99% confidence in our figures that we turn out them. And we want to have a margin of error of, say, 2%. So the system will tell us how many people do we have to interview. We have to interview in order to be 99% confidence and 2% margin of error.
Okay. So I want you to answer your own question.
Yes.
About, what number do you need to get, say, 18?
It depends on the confidence level you have. If you choose 95% confidence and 5% margin of error, the number to interview will be smaller. The higher the confidence level you choose and the margin of error very small, the larger the sample size you need to interview. So for example, if you want to have 1% margin of error at 99% confidence for Ghana population, you have to do an interview of maybe 16,000 people.
How so? How does 16,000? How is 16,000 reflective of 8 million?
Because you are first allocating the 16,000 sample in accordance with the voting population of all the regions.
Ah, okay.
That's the starting point. And then you go into the regions and deploy that proportion of the votes or sample assigned to that region randomly. If you are doing field work like we do, we come to Greater Accra. So we have, let's say, 2,000 people to interview. We have 27 or 32 constituencies in Greater Accra. We want to select 30% of those constituencies and run the sample that we have in those 30% constituencies.
Okay.
So we again randomly pick 30% of the Accra constituencies. That may be 11 or 9.
Okay.
And that 9 would assign that 2,000 sample to these 9 constituencies. And again, you can't assign it in the same, like equally.
Okay.
You see what proportion.
Oh, you have to look at, again, going back to the roots. Oh, okay. So now if Greater Accra is 21.
Yes.
So Western, do you have Western in your head, off-head?
I don't
Western
have
region, they are country.
No,
okay, so let's work with Ashanti and Greater Accra.
Yes.
So again, 21 for Greater Accra, 19 for Ashanti region,
Yes.
since we have those readily available.
Absolutely. So once you have that number.
So wherever you go, you have to look at what their contribution is to the national voting pattern.
And then to the contribution to the region. So if you are in Greater Accra and you've chosen 9 regions, 9 constituencies. That 9 constituencies, you share the samples that you have assigned to Greater Accra to this 9 in the way that reflects the voting contribution of that constituency. So for example, you have Domi Kobenya, the largest, Medina. So Domi Kobenya will have more numbers to interview than Medina in that order. If you pick Ada or Sege in the constituency, they will have the least because the voters there are very small. In that way, you are representing the sample in a way that really reflects the structure of the population or voting population in Greater Accra. If you do it in any other way, you will go off.
Okay. Wow. Okay. There's a lot to learn. So if you're watching us, it's one-on-one. We want to understand, the whole idea of polling. And a lot of you are quick to say, oh, and the pollsters got it wrong. Oh, they predict, they don't, it's not based on anything. I hope that you're learning a lot, first of all, in how they choose the people or the sample size, to use the right term, the sample size or the people to be interviewed for the polls, their contribution to the national elections. So if, is it the East, you mentioned 2%, is it Northeast?
Northeast.
Northeast, for instance, contribute 2%. So you can't go there and ascribe 21. You're supposed to give them 2. If you're talking about sample size. Ashanti region contributes 19%. So if you're polling, you go to Ashanti region, make sure that wherever you're polling, you give them 19, so that you can have a fair and accurate prediction of the poll, whatever poll that you're conducting. I think this makes it a lot easier, to understand. So, and you talk about the American issue and say, okay, they've been getting on for quite, some time now. Does the bias, I know we're not supposed to be, but does the bias or the implicit bias maybe of the pollsters kind of impact?
There are a number of ways.
Okay.
You see, when you call or you meet a voter to interview, the most important thing is to let them feel that you are independent.
How do you do that?
By not asking leading questions.
Leading question. Okay, so I will let you pause there. So leading question, for instance, so if you go to pollster, in some way we ask them one.
Absolutely.
So you don't like Kennedy Japan, it's about me a liar.
those kind of
those things are
absolutely.
leading. So then they would know where you're coming from, and they might give you the answer you want to hear.
Absolutely.
I would be a good poster. Okay, I get it.
So you must first remove any element of bias from the question itself and the way the questions are asked.
Right.
So you must train your field officers to understand these concepts.
Okay.
If they fail to, believe me, your numbers will be wrong.
Okay, so we will continue that, but I want us to use an example of your latest poll. So if you can make reference to your latest poll on some of the questions that you asked, the sample size you used. So this has to do with the New Patriotic Party's November 4 primaries, and Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia seems to be leading per the polls. Kennedy Japan is right there, right tightly behind him. And then, so let's talk about, since you talk about questions, let's look at some of the questions that you asked the people.
So, for example, when we call delegates, we ask them, do you approve or disapprove the performance of the president? You don't get any hint whether you want a positive or negative response from you.
So you've given them a choice, an open,
And also, we ask them, do they believe that Ghana is headed in the right direction or wrong direction? And they answer.
So, but here is the thing.
Yes.
So if you ask those two questions, for instance, right, and I am an NPP delegate, right, I will vote. If I say that I approve of the president's performance, does that mean that person is likely to vote for Dr. Bawumia?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, because they're all from the same party, right?
Not necessarily.
So what does it mean? What does that mean? What does that do?
It is useful for us to ask that question, because for people who said, I am undecided, right? If you want to go into their heads, the way they say we approve or disapprove will give you a clue as to where they will vote for if given the chance. For voters who do not approve the president's performance, or said, oh, wrong direction, if he tells you that I am undecided and you want to find out how he's going to vote, look at his two responses. It will give you a clue.
Okay. So if I say, for instance, that, the country is not going in the right direction, and then conclude by saying I'm still undecided, then it means I'm likely to vote against.
Absolutely.
Okay. Wow. That's interesting. Okay. So because I've already given you an answer to say that the country is not going in the right direction. Yes, I'm undecided, but I am likely to vote against.
So when we are doing our predictions, let's say at the end of the poll, the numbers were not clear. But we as pollsters have to find a way of going into your head and see what is the probability that you vote for Bawumia or vote for Kennedy. If your response is wrong direction, you are more probable to vote for Kennedy than Bawumia. Okay,
I guess it, because Dr. Bawumia is directly attached to Nana Akufo-Addo, policies and everything. Absolutely. And they've been in government for the past 7 years.
Absolutely. So the line of questioning must be very clear, must be unambiguous, must be unbiased. That's the starting point.
Then the other thing to do as a pollster,
you must do is that, look, you must, when they know that you are independent pollster, you have not been sent by campaign A or campaign B, they will talk to you. They have known Global Info. They've heard our name. We're not a partisan pollsters.
Sure.
So when you call them, say, oh, I am one. So they know us. So they are freely able to talk to us. Even though some will say, oh, I won't tell you my answer, but he will have a conversation with you. He said, I won't tell you my answer. And another thing that affects the quality of the poll is the truthfulness of the person you are interviewing. Some will deliberately lie to you.
But you had that in a notes, because I think in one of your polls you mentioned that there was a place you went and they thought you had been sent by the president, so they lied to you. So I want that done.
Yes, and see, if you were a clever pollster, there are other questions you could ask in between to be able to triangulate the true intention of that voter. Now, what happened in Asenov was that we went into, I think it was Kushia. The very hour president had left there.
Yes. And so this was peak Asenov by election. The president had gone there and had just left, and they went there to do the poll. So the people suspected the posters to have been sent by the president. So just the background to that. So
the numbers were too good to be true because we've seen the numbers there before. But the number that was recorded from Kusha that day was highly suspicious.
Because how come? The president just lives. Why are these people here? That was the
Absolutely.
mindset.
So they thought we were sent and that
so they give you an answer you wanted to hear.
Economical again with the truth. We also identify certain demography who were lying to us. But by their nature, they shouldn't be giving us those responses they were giving us. So we profiled them. So we knew that there were people who were being a bit cunning with the truth.
Sure.
And then we were able to say, that, okay, from what we have done in Asino, even though Charles Opoku was leading by 1.1%, knowing what we know, we think he will go and lose the election.
Yes, I remember that. And there was a headline to that effect, I think 247 News GH said, NPP's Charles Opoku marginally leads, but NDC's James Chashikwe would win. Yes. And that was a headline. Yes. I remember it very because I read that story. We're taking our very first break. When we come back, we'll look at the details of the latest polls by Global InfoAnalytics on the national, the new patriotic party's primaries on November 4, where Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia is leading. We'll get into the details of the sample size, the truthfulness of the persons who were polled, and then also the impact of this pre-poll before the final voting on November 4. We'll be right back. Welcome back to One on One on Metro Television here. I want you to talk about this. That I think the sample size is over 4,000.
Yes, 4,000.
Over 4,000. And here, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia is leading. I believe I've seen 43.5. Is it 35? So 43.5%. Dr. Bawumia is leading by 43.5%. Kennedy Ejapon behind him, almost half of it. He's halved it. So 23.5. Francis Adainimo is closely a 3/3.4%, and then Dr. Owusu Efiakoto also monitored, also there with 0.3%. Here is that thing. Undisclosed is about 14%. That is huge.
Huge.
When it's undecided, I'm sorry, I'm yet to ask you the question, but why do I think it's people who vote against Dr. Bawumia? I don't know. That's what I'm thinking. Based on you can tell me the science behind it, but that's what I'm thinking. And then not disclosed, and then undecided is 18.3%. That is crazy. So let's go over this.
Yes.
So you have 40% who will not tell you whether they will vote for X, Y. They know who they will, but they just won't say it.
They won't say it.
And then 18% say, 0.3% say, we are just not decided on out of these men who we want to vote for. I want us to start from there. What happened? What's going on? Why do we have 14 and 18%?
There may be people who are sincerely torn between Bawumia and Kennedy.
Wow. But that is even not good for Dr. Bawumia, to be very honest.
No. And usually, if you have a higher number of people who are undecided in an election like this, they don't break the way of the establishment. They usually gravitate towards the anti-establishment.
Yeah.
So that is a concern for Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia.
Okay.
And for those who said they will not disclose, we believe that most of them are Kennedy supporters.
Okay, but they don't want to say it because they don't want to be known.
Yes.
Why? They'll be maligned or what? Why?
When you speak to delegates who are Bawumia supporters, they are very bold.
Okay, I get it. Because he's the establishment's candidate,
very
and
bold.
It's okay to say, nobody's going to punish you for supporting Dr. Bawumia.
But we've seen people who go into their shells and say, media men can't. Okay. And we suspect those ones, before then they were Alan and now Kennedy people, yes. So that is where the problem for Bawumia lies. Those undisclosed. Okay. Because if you should add even 90% of them undisclosed to Kennedy, that is going to take him a very, very high number. And then the undecided as well. And he has to be very careful in his campaign. Even
Dr. Bawumia?
Yes.
Okay. Because, if the number here is anything to go by, which is 43.5%, he might win, but just not with the margin that maybe even he had anticipated, because I know his supporters are all saying that he will have about 80%. But that's not what the poll is saying.
That will not happen. He won't get 80%. No. And these numbers are worrying for him. He may win if you look at our model.
In other words, even on the national impact of his Dr. Bawumia's performance here will affect his performance nationally. That's just what it means.
Yeah. It's indirectly telling you that he's going to struggle nationally as well.
Okay. And Kennedy Japan here has 23.5%. And so if they are not disclosing, which is like 14%, those people you say are likely to vote for
Kennedy
Japan. Okay. Let's look at some of the questions you asked them to arrive at this.
These are very straightforward questions.
Okay.
In the upcoming MPP primaries,
yeah,
who would you vote for?
It's okay.
Straightforward.
Straightforward.
Yes.
Oh. And then you say, okay, I won't tell you.
Yes, I won't tell you.
But if I vote Bawumia, I'm voting Dr. Bawumia.
But it's most often, before they tell me that I won't tell you, he will talk and tell you all sort of things that either he's happy with or not happy with. Then he says, I won't tell you. So indirectly, you know what he's going to do.
Wow. And then, but 0.3%.
I mean, the two other candidates, they will not make any impact in the race. And we don't expect the race to go into runoff. It will be just one touch for.
What do you say to people who say, oh, how can you, I've heard a lot of people have said this, that it's over 200,000 delegates who are voting. How can you say 4,000 people represent, or 4,200 people represent the 200,000? What's the response to that?
The responses we got, it came from 275 constituencies. These 4,311. And they were randomly picked by the computer.
Okay.
So if they should queue again to vote randomly, that behavior will be reflected in the polls.
Wow. Again, let's go on. Okay, I think there's a point where you have, if there were to be like a runoff.
Yes.
But 43.5, is that, does that push it?
Yeah, but you see, those who are undecided, or I will not disclose, when they show up to the polling station, they will vote.
Yes.
So
they will definitely vote for someone.
So the actual results will be far higher than what you are seeing now. These are what we call the headline poll numbers.
Oh, okay.
So we have then calculate or do some modeling to see what would the actual results be using a number of scenarios. I think down the line we will see that.
Take me through swing regions results, and it is tight. Greater Accra region, Central region, and the Western region. Every time they mention Central and Western, I've told you, we don't trust those people. I mean, I lived in the Western region. I was born in the Western region, and I come from the Central region. And we swing basa. So I'm telling you. So let's go over that.
If you look at the swing regions, Dr. Bawumia leads
32.3%. Yes.
Kennedy, 27.3%.
Okay.
Then not disclosed, 16.2%. And undecided is 22.9%.
Wow.
So the same pattern of behavior nationally we've seen is being replicated in the swing regions, which is worrying. I mean, this race, to be very honest, even though Dr. Bawumia has advantage, upper hand, anything can happen.
Especially in the swing regions. No, and it's not much, to be honest. So, because the swing regions, look at the numbers. Kennedy Japan is 27.3 and Dr. Bawumia is 32.3. That's like about 5% between them. And yet you have undecided, non-disclosed. And if we're to go by the behavioral pattern of undisclosed, it's persons who are likely to vote for Kennedy Japan, which means it will swing in favor of Kennedy.
If you break the race down to the regions, Kennedy is leading in the Central region.
Okay. Okay. They are backing him.
Yes.
My Central region are backing him.
In a very big way. So
I see.
It's very.
Why did you do? You did something here, Akan regions.
Yes.
Well, why did you do that? Why was it important to do Akan regions? Why?
It's important because one of the candidates is an Akan, and the other is not Akan.
It will not be the first time.
No, but it's still relevant to see whether ethnicity is still playing a role.
And in all the polls, we've seen ethnicity and religion.
You can't pretend all is well.
Oh, okay.
For us as posters, we are brave. We ask questions that nobody dares to ask.
Uncomfortable questions.
Yes, that is what gives you the data, insight.
Dr. Bawumia?
37.2.
And 31.6.
0.6.
But then here, every single time we mention these polls done by Global InfoAnalytics, pay attention to the non-disclosed and undecided. because they are so huge.
30%.
Yes.
13 plus 17.
0.1. That's almost 30. That's 30.
Yes.
30 plus.
Yes.
30%. Okay, 17.2 say they are undecided. 13.1 say they will not disclose. Because if you're voting Dr. Bawumia, you are probably and proudly likely to say, I'm voting for Dr. Bawumia because nobody's going to whip you for saying that. In fact, you'll be cheered and hailed. So Northern Regions, Bawumia is up there with 74.8, which he wants it to be like a reflective of all the regions in terms of the final outcome on November 4. So if you look at Northern Regions, yes.
If Northern Region is 74.8,
yeah.
Alan is Kennedy is 10.6.
And even there,
Kennedy is completely
lost.
annihilated.
Yes, annihilated in the Northern Region, yeah.
And I think one of the problems for Kennedy in the overall outcome is the volume of losses he would incur in the North.
Yes, because of his utterances again, or what?
Well, I won't say because of his performance in the North in terms of vote
but
that he would get.
Well, okay, so let me rephrase it. So with polls, you don't get into those things, right?
No.
But for us, we are interested because he's made certain remarks that are anti, northern or tribal.
In this
polling,
poll, we didn't
explain.
ask them what were your reasons for choosing A or B.
Okay. Why wasn't that important?
Well, for us, it wasn't.
It wasn't because it's just about who gets the nod on
yes,
November 4.
Yes.
But that will be important in the national elections.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
But we do ask those questions in the general elections.
Okay, all right. Volta and OT regions, interesting again.
39% Bawumia and almost 22% Kennedy.
But then look at the non-disclosed and undecided.
It's
combined is over 38%.
Almost 40%.
Almost 40% in Volta and OT region. That is huge.
Which means that the race could go either way.
Can inducements change this?
I'm not a delegate.
Okay.
But certainly some people will be induced and they will be influenced to vote certain way. But I think majority of them will not be induced by money. They will take the money, but they will vote their mind.
Okay. No, I'm asking because remember in Asin North, persons took money
and they
voted against, and we saw that.
I think, see, the delegates are quite different from the general voters.
Right. Okay.
The delegates sometimes are loyal.
Okay.
When you give them money, you buy their loyalty and they stick with you. Those who are not going to vote for you, they will still take the money and vote against you.
Right.
So it will play a role, much bigger role than the national election. For the MPP race, we did a tracking of the various polls that we've conducted since June. Okay. And you are showing the trajectory of the race. And in the first race, I think Bawumia was on 34.8.
Right.
Before the superdelegate election.
Okay.
After superdelegate election, he went to 48.8. Went up, huge bump.
Explain to me what happened here. What do you think happened?
The euphoria about his winning superdelegate at the time, that margin, made people say, okay,
they whipped everybody in line.
So that number went up. In that space, Alan was still there, remember. But then when Alan withdrew and we did the poll again, he dropped. Okay. From 48.8 to 44.9%.
Where did that go?
That's when Alan withdrew.
Yes, but then where did those numbers go? Can you tell who benefited from?
They went into those who are saying undecided or I'll not tell you.
Oh, okay. Again.
But Alan Ken too dropped.
Right. 18%. Okay, so it's not like he benefited.
No, he didn't benefit.
So it means that Mr. Alan Kojo had an impact.
Yes, on the primary. The latest one that we did, Bawumia dropped again. So he's been on a constant downward trend since the superdelegate elections in terms of the tracking. Okay. And Kennedy has an upward trajectory. Okay. Slightly. Okay. So, and that is the danger for Bawumia. If at the time we finish this poll, he is on 43.5%, and there's a few weeks to go, he has to be very careful that if it doesn't slip below 40% by the time the elections are held, that could be dangerous for him. There was a video that came out, and it was the Member of Parliament for Dankwah. She had gone to the markets, and the markets women were shouting, away, away. Yes, that's what they did. What I want to find out from you is that, given the behavior of voters, this is her constituent, and it's a marketplace. Will this be a fair representation or reflective
in the final outcome of voting in Dankwah?
Okay, let me tell you two things.
Sure, go ahead.
We've done some work on Dankwah recently.
Yes, I think I saw that. Yes.
And what she is facing currently doesn't surprise me.
Okay.
Because 71% of Dankwah voters said she's performed poorly or very poorly as an MP.
Okay.
This is going to hurt her badly in the MPP primaries.
Okay.
If she contests the primaries for the MPP, it'll be very tough for her. And it's very hard to see if she's going to survive the primaries. But if she survives the primaries and comes to general election, she has a battle to fight. Because the other part of the MPP, people who were saying away, will not vote for her.
Okay. But I mean, that's a very strong seat that has consistently been for the new Patriotic Party. Yes.
MPP is behind.
At the moment in Dankwah, the NPP is behind.
Yes.
So it means that it doesn't matter whether it's Adjoa Safudi represents or not.
Yes.
They're still behind in the poll.
And we expect that once they've done their primaries, we will know the true scale of their challenges.
Okay.
Because Adjoa Safudi has ardent supporters who would vote for her come what may.
Yes.
And that if you bring any other
person...
That's
a loyalist.
Loyalist.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
You bring anybody else, they won't vote for that person. And these people are normally in Taifa North and Taifa South.
Okay.
And about 45% of MPP's winning margin in that constituency come from Taifa North and Taifa South.
Okay.
So if that vote doesn't come, trouble in Dankwah.
Okay. And I want to do like a general swoop of certain constituencies. I remember you talked about Nsawome Duajiri. And another prayer, he literally like kind of dismissed it, and yet I have seen him work so hard post that poll. He's doing the road, he's doing a gutter, and he's posting it and showing it. First of all, did you get like a direct response from him when he did that poll? And then what has changed? Have you gone back? What has changed? Yes.
We did the first poll,
yes,
which was really bad for him.
Yes.
And then we put it out there. I think, see, sometimes when they speak to the media about the polls, don't trust what they say in public. Yeah. Look at what they do on the ground.
So after the poll, they become extra active.
Absolutely. Because, look, sincerely, they know that we don't cook the polls in our kitchens. Yeah. They know it. Okay. Because when we are going, we tell them where we are going, when we'll be there for, and how many people we intend to interview there. So anybody who does poll in the kitchen doesn't put these figures out there for you to know what they are going to be doing next time. I think they take our poll very seriously. And those who take it seriously are really benefiting from it. You remember MP for Anyaso Utum? There were polls that he was really, really in trouble. And he turns things around from what we've seen. So if you joke with it, it's your own cup of tea.
I think another member of parliament that I personally spoke to, member of parliament for Medina. Yes. Francis Javier or Xavier Sosu. And I mean, he does a lot in parliament. I think he's one parliamentarian who acts as a parliamentarian. Perhaps his background as a lawyer helps because he's always, introducing legislation. I think recently was extension of maternity and I think paternity leave. Talks about the PAD, removal of taxes on PAD. So he does what standard legislators are supposed to do. And yet, this is Ghana. We just don't have lawmakers. We have lawmakers who are development actors. And so that's why you see them do the roads, you see them do the construction of, KVIPs or public toilets, all those things, because it matters to the constituent. They want those. Did you get any response for that? Is Medina same? Has Medina changed? Have you gone back? I am interested to know.
Since that poll, in fact, they took us the cleaners and massacred us.
How? Explain to me. What happened? What happened? I don't think I've seen that quite.
After the poll, we had people coming from his camp, his researchers, poo-pooing what we have done, and that is not scientific, it's biased. We were influenced by money to go and do the poll, all sort of things.
Money from who?
From
what? From persons who don't like him?
Or from the independent candidate who is contesting him, who was in the lead. Okay. And this somebody, in fact, I met him once, that candidate. I was in Zongo for a program and then he came and so independent candidate Medina here. In fact, I didn't give me those chance. Yeah. I did not. Until the poll happened, I said, hey.
Wow.
So since then, I think I've seen him double his effort. Yeah. Engaging the community. I've seen it in my own eyes.
Yes.
And I said,
I've
well,
seen he was at various events, and then he would even invite the media to cover so people can see that he's working.
Yeah, no, so that is what the poll does. It wakes you up. It wakes you up.
Yeah.
That look, things are not well. And sometimes when the party researchers do work for you, sometimes they have conflict of interest situation.
Right.
He wants to praise, so things are okay. In reality, they are not. So we have to balance internal research plus a bit of independent people to look over the shoulder and see whether things are right. Otherwise, you'll be sinking comfortably before you realize you are losing.
One question I want to ask, and it's interesting that you bring up the issue of money. Does Global InfoAnalytics get funding, whether external or domestic? 1, 2. Do you partner others to do, polls?
Let me start with the first question.
Yes.
We don't get a dime from anybody, either locally or internationally.
Wow.
No.
Hey, then you are prone to bribery and corruption.
You see, the polling is our CSR, corporate social responsibility.
Wow.
If MTN does CSR, do you ask them where they get the money from? You don't. We have clients, private clients we work for. We have worked with international companies who pay us for the work we do. So
it's based on that.
So we get money from the...
And your credibility itself sells.
It's what gives us the international client.
Right.
We didn't go and pay bribe to get that client to come to us. And that client is a global client. We've worked with 2 big global clients in the last 24 months.
Wow.
I don't want to mention their names.
But is it on Ghana's election or something else?
No. I mean, they're commercial business.
Okay. Oh, wow.
The polling is 5% of what we do.
What other things
we
do
are
you
market research,
do?
risk consultant,
Got it.
and modeling organization.
Okay.
So the polling is our CSR that we do.
Oh.
But we do also partner media houses.
Okay.
For example, if you want to partner us to go and do a survey in Central Region, see what is happening there for your own and exclusive use. We do that.
I've seen you partner a sister station. I mean,
yes.
I think this current poll, for instance,
yes,
you
we partnered, City FM.
Right.
So we co-funded it.
Okay.
Right? And for that, we would publish the results on their platform, and then we can share with other media. But when you pay for it exclusively, we have no right to talk about it anywhere else.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, I get it. So whatever you've done with those international platforms, for instance, is not open for discussion because it's for them and their private use.
Yes.
But have you been offered bribe by anybody? Ghana, I mean directly, let me ask you a question. Have you been bribed by the NDC?
In 2019, when we started, someone called us from a political party.
I asked you a direct question. Have you been bribed by NDC?
No.
Have you been bribed by NPP?
We have refused.
So NPP offered bribe and you refused?
No, they won't call it bribe. To work with us. To work with them. I said, okay.
When they say work with you, what do they mean?
We
do things in their favor?
We have code of ethics.
Okay.
Written. That we can share with everybody as of today.
Okay.
How we work. We can work with MPP. We can work with NDC privately.
Okay. As in do things for them.
To see.
For them to use for their party use.
Absolutely.
But they cannot influence national.
We don't talk about those kind of things.
Okay.
We don't mention it. Because we choose randomly where we want to go. You could say, okay, I am MPP or MPP parliamentary candidate. Let me know whether I am winning this seat or not. Okay.
And where do I need to work? Which areas do I need to improve?
We go there, do the survey, give you the results, we walk away. We won't talk about it, we won't mention it, we are gone.
Okay.
And we don't care which party we come from.
Okay.
And we've done that in the past. And we don't talk about it, we don't mention it. The one we talk about in public is our public opinion poll.
Okay.
That is a CSR, corporate social responsibility. Full stop.
Wow. How do you deal with attacks when you put it out? Even before that, what about the people you work with? You might not accept the bribe. You might not. Have they not tried to bribe maybe persons you work with, or do they know?
You see, we have over 150 volunteers nationwide. The maximum they can do in the national election or the poll of 5,000, 6,000 is to do 110 interviews.
Okay.
So how can, even if you influence this guy, for example, how can 110 interview affect the national sample? But before we get you on board, we have to train you to understand our corporate values. When you share these values with us, you understand why we're doing this, then we enroll you. We never enroll anybody who comes to us from social media. No. We do snowballing recruitment. People we know that know somebody.
Okay.
Are people we work with. We trust them.
Okay.
And we don't engage political activists as field officers.
Okay.
We send them all over the places, professional, do the interview and go your way. Because it is important that you even let your party know the truth on the ground.
Sure.
You are doing them a disservice if you lie in the polls. And
but not necessarily to lie in the polls, but just so your prediction will be wrong so they can say you are influenced, your bots, right? We have
systems we use to detect when a field officer is not doing the right thing.
Okay. Have you sacked anyone?
Yes.
You have?
Yes,
sacked
we have.
People who were compromised?
More than one, yes.
Wow.
Not compromised, but unethical.
Okay.
If you lie about your location, where we ask you to go, because we will know where you should go.
Okay.
Through the system that we have deployed. If you lied about where you went, that we will not compromise. You are fired. You see, you can make silly mistakes. We will train you to be able to do the right thing. But once what you do is ethical, there's no room to change somebody's ethical behavior. We sack you.
I was going to ask about, how you deal with attacks. Sometimes I'm sure you don't take it personal when people attack.
No. I think I believe that
the institution.
A lot of them are learning polling for the first time.
Okay.
They're not used to this kind of facts being put out there.
Okay.
So for them, it's uneasiness that it brings. But some are learning from it. A lot of people that have called me, you'll be shocked. Both MPP and NDC, they are happy that we are changing the narrative of polling in this country. For me, that's what makes me happy.
MUSSA DANKWAH is the Executive Director of Global InfoAnalytics. I cannot believe that time went so fast when you're at the peak of it. But we'll definitely have him back in the studio because there will be a lot more polling going on before, post the NPP primaries. I'm sure you'll do another one.
January.
Then,
that's a massive one.
Okay, when? In January?
January, yes.
Okay, all right. Then we'll do the national one, 2024. So we'll definitely bring him back in the studio. Hopefully, Metro TV will have enough money to partner him and do polls as other stations have. Thank you, City as well, for sharing this with us. Thank you for watching. My name is Bridget Otu. See you again next week.